You there? He shouted, his voice breaking through the quiet night like a thunderclap. You, my own flesh and blood. You betrayed me in the most vile way. Obinna fell to his knees, trembling. Father, please forgive me. But there was no forgiveness in Ezedike's heart that night. He turned to the gods. His hands lifted towards the heavens, and his voice ranged with a power no one had ever heard before. I curse you, Obinna. You and your descendant shall never be free. From this day forward, you will live in the shadows, forever bound to serve your brother and his descendants. Your name will be forgotten, and your bloodline will wear the mark of slaves. Obinna wept, clutching at his father's feet, but the curse has already taken root. The sky above them darkened, and the cold wind swept through the kingdom as if the gods themselves were bearing witness. You're specially welcome to Queen Ama's Tales. This is the most thrilling and intriguing story that you would listen to this week. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you. The land of Umunna was a prosperous one, blessed by the gods with fertile soil, gentle rivers, and thick forests that provided everything the people needed. At the heart of the kingdom stood the great palace of Chief Ezedike, a man known far and wide for his wisdom, strength, and his deep love for his people. His home, however, carried a sadness that shadowed his every smile. It has been 5 years since Nkiru, his beloved wife, passed away, leaving him with their 2 sons, Obinna and Chibuzo. Nkiru had been the light of his life, a woman with a heart as large as the ocean, and her absence was felt not just by Ezedike, but by the entire kingdom. Obinna, the firstborn, had inherited his father's strength and leadership, but his heart was like a storm, unpredictable and wild. He was a man who lived in the moment, often letting his passion guide him rather than his wisdom. Chibuzo, the younger son, was the opposite. He was calm, thoughtful, and deeply reflective, a boy who spent more time in the sacred grove praying to the gods than in the marketplace. As Ezedike grew older, the loneliness of his wife's absence ground at him, and he realized the kingdom needed a woman's touch once more. After much deliberation and pressure from the council of elders, he decided to remarry. His new wife, Nneka, was young and radiant, her beauty unmatched by anyone in Umunna. Her arrival brought a sense of renewal to Ezedike's life, and for a time, the household was at peace. But peace in Umunna was fleeting, for beneath the surface, trouble brewed. Obinna, Chief's first son, watched Nneka with eyes that betrayed a longing he could not understand, let alone control. From the moment she entered their home, her presence unsettled him. She was beautiful, too beautiful, with skin the color of roasted palm nuts and eyes that seemed to see right through him. Her laughter filled the compound, and her graceful movements captivated everyone. But Obinna felt something more, a dangerous pull towards her. He tried to resist it at first, turning away whenever her gaze met with his. He prayed to the gods, begging his ancestors to remove the thoughts from his mind, but they persisted. The forbidding nature of his feeling only made them stronger. One fateful evening, when the moon hung low in the sky and the village was asleep, Obinna found himself walking towards the hut where Nneka slept. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of night blooming flowers. He stood outside her doorway, heart pounding, knowing he should turn back, but unable to. Inside, Nneka sat, her eyes catching the soft glow of the moonlight. When she saw Obinna, she didn't scream or shout. Instead, her lip curled into a smile that told him she had been waiting. Obinna, without another word, crossed the threshold, his hands trembling as he reached for her. Ezedike couldn't sleep that night. His bones ached as they often did in his old age, and the stillness of the night left him restless. He decided to walk through the compound, hoping the cool air would bring him peace. As he neared Nneka's hut, however, he saw something that stood him in his tracks. There, through the small opening of the door, he saw his son, his first son, entangled with his wife. A roar of fury erupted from his chest, loud enough to wake his spirit. Obinna and Nneka sprang apart, terror in their eyes, but it was too late. Ezedike's face twisted in rage and betrayal as he advanced on them. "You there?" he shouted, his voice breaking through the quiet night like a thunderclap. "You, my own flesh and blood. You betray me in the most vile way." Obinna fell to his knees, trembling. "Father, please, please forgive me." But there was no forgiveness in Ezedike's heart that night. He turned to the gods, his hands lifted towards the heavens, and his voice ranged with a power no one had ever heard before. "I curse you, Obinna. You and your descendants shall never be free. From this day forward, you will live in the shadows, forever bound to serve your brother and his descendants. Your name will be forgotten, and your bloodline will wear the marks of slaves." Obinna wept, clutching at his father's feet, but the curse had already taken root. The sky above them darkened, and a cold wind swept through the kingdom as if the gods themselves were bearing witness. Nneka, stricken with shame and guilt, fled the kingdom that very night, never to be seen again. The curse split Umunna into two clans, the Nwaokike and the Amadi. From that day onward, Obinna's bloodline, now the Amadi, lived under the weight of their shame. They became slaves to Chibuzo descendants, the Nwaokike. The Amadi wore only black clothing, a symbol of their servitude, and were forbidden from owning lands, marrying outside their clan, or participating in any of the kingdom's celebration. Chibuzo, though heartbroken by his brother's fate, obeyed their father's will. He became the leader of the freeborn Nwaokik, but his heart carried the burden of Obinna's betrayal. The two brothers, once close, now lived worlds apart within the same kingdom, their destinies forever entwined in pain and sorrow. The years passed, and the curse Ezedike had laid upon Obinna bloodline grew heavier with each generation. Umunna kingdom was no longer the peaceful place it once was. A deep line had been drawn between the Nwaokik and the Amadi. The Nwaokik, blessed by their freeborn status, lived in prosperity. Their homes were large, their clothes were bright and colorful, adorned with beads and fine clothes woven from silk. Their children were educated and they held position of power in the kingdom. The Amadis, on the other hand, wore the mark of servitude. Their homes were small and clustered at the edge of the kingdom, hidden away from the vibrant heart of Umunna. They wore only black, simple and rough clothes that made them stand out wherever they went. They were not allowed to attend the kingdom's festivals, and they could not own land or participate in council meetings. The curse had shackled them to a life of silence and obedience. Yet, within the Amadi, a quiet strength endured. They became master blacksmiths, artisans whose skill were unmatched in the kingdom. They crafted the finest tools, weapons and ornaments, but none could escape the chains of their birth. Despite their talent, they were slaves to the Nwaokik, forever bound by a curse they did not deserve. Ikenna, the son of Igwe Obieze, chief of the Nwaokik's clan, stood at the edge of his father's compound, watching the sunset. He was a young man of great promise, tall and strong, with eyes that held the wisdom of someone far beyond his years. From a young age, Ikenna had been groomed to take over his father's leadership, to guide the Nwaokik in the way of prosperity and power. But Ikenna's heart was different from those before him. While many of the Nwaokik accepted the curse placed upon the Amadi without question, Ikenna was not so easily swayed. He often wandered to the edge of the kingdom, observing the Amadi as they worked, wondering why the sins of their ancestors should still bind them. One evening, as he walked near the river that separated the land of the freeborn and the slaves, he saw a young woman from the Amadi clan. Her back was to him as she gathered herbs along the river bank. Her movements were graceful, and her quiet determination drew him closer. She was not like the other Amadi he had seen from afar. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something deeper, a quiet strength that made him stood in his tracks. Amaka was the daughter of Onyedike, one of the finest blacksmiths in Umunna. Though her family lived in the shadow of servitude, they carried a fierce pride in their crafts. Amaka had grown up hearing stories of the curse that bound her people to the Nwaokik, and though she accepted her place in the world, she harbored a deep longing for freedom. Amaka was known in Amadi clan for her wisdom and her skills in herbal medicine. She often spent her days at the river bank, gathering plants and flowers that she would later turn into medicine for her people. On this particular evening, she was lost in her thoughts, her hands busy plucking the leaves of the otazi plant, when she sensed someone watching her. When she turned around, her eyes met Ikenna, For a moment, she seemed to stand still. She had seen him before, the heir to the Nwaokik throne, but never had their paths crossed like this. Do you need something, Nwaokik? She asked, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Ikenna took a step closer, his gaze locked on hers. I've seen you here before, he said softly, but I never knew your name. Amaka straightened her chin, lifting slightly. I am Amaka, the daughter of Onyedike. Her words were simple, but there was a quiet defiance in her tone. She did not bow or lower her eyes as other Amadi did when speaking to the freeborn. Instead, she looked at him directly, as if challenging him to see her not as a slave but as an equal. Ikenna felt something stir within him, something he had never felt before. I am Ikenna, he said, though he knew she already knew his name. What are you doing here so late? I gather herbs for my people, she replied, turning back to the river bank. The sun may be setting, but my work does not end with it. Her response left him speechless for a moment. He watched as she continued her task, her hands moving swiftly and expertly over the plants. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, and he found himself drawn to her strength and her independence. May I walk with you? He asked. Amaka hesitated. She had never known a Nwaokik to ask permission to do anything, let alone to walk beside an Amadi. But something in Ikenna's eyes made her nod.